The ship from Earth was small, that was the first thing everyone noticed when it arrived at Station Paramount. The massive station floated at the center of conquered space, home to diplomats and traders from over 400 species. Ships of all sizes came and went every hour, but the human vessel was modest, almost humble compared to the grand cruisers of the elder races. Ambassador Elena Vasquez stood at the viewport as her ship approached the docking ring. She was 53 years old with gray streaks in her dark hair and calm brown eyes that had seen much in her years of service. Behind her, her small delegation prepared their documents and checked their formal uniforms one last time. First clears throat impressions. Matter, she said quietly, but not in the way most species think. Her aide, a young man named Thomas Chen, looked up from his tablet. The Concord Intake Committee is already assembled. They seem eager to process us quickly. Elena smiled slightly. I'm sure they are. Another primitive species seeking protection under the Concord's wing. They've seen it hundreds of times. Humanity had been traveling among the stars for only 80 years. In that time, they had established 12 colonies and made peaceful contact with 17 alien species. Most of those species had warned them about the galactic Concord. Join quickly, they said. The Concord protects the weak. Without membership, you'll be absorbed or destroyed by one of the major powers. So Earth had applied for membership. But Elena carried something unusual in her diplomatic pouch, something no other species had ever submitted with their application. The docking procedure took 30 minutes. Then Elena and her team walked through gleaming corridors filled with aliens of every shape and size. Some walked on two legs like humans. Others floated, crawled, or moved in ways that human minds struggled to process. The air carried 100 different scents, filtered and processed to be tolerable for all species. The intake chamber was a vast circular room with tiered seating rising on all sides. At the center was a small platform where applicant species presented themselves. Elena noted that the platform was lower than the surrounding seats. Deliberate design choice. It made the applicants look up at their judges. She stepped onto the platform without hesitation. Her team arranged themselves. Behind her, Ambassador Elena Vasquez of Earth announced a mechanical voice representing the United Human Nations application for provisional membership in the Galactic Concord. The committee consisted of 12 representatives from senior Concord species. Elena recognized most of them from her briefings. The insectoid Velth, known for their bureaucratic precision, the towering Morthan, whose forearms were folded in obvious boredom, and seated prominently in the center, Counselor V3 of the Torum Dominion. The Torum were humanoid but larger than humans, with thick-scaled skin and pronounced ridges along their skulls. They were known throughout the galaxy as warriors and traders, though the line between trading and raiding often blurred. In their culture, V3 regarded Elena with the expression of someone examining an insect. Pros. With your presentation, said the Velth chairperson, her mandibles clicking. Softly, Elena bowed her head. Respectfully, thank you, honored committee members. Earth is grateful for this opportunity to join the galactic community. We come seeking peaceful cooperation, trade relationships, and mutual understanding. She gestured, and Thomas projected holographic images showing Earth its colonies and its modest fleet of ships. The numbers were unimpressive by conquered standards. 12. World's 300 military vessels, 8 billion. Humans spread across their small territory. Standard application. Muttered a committee member. Nothing remarkable. Elena continued her presentation, covering Earth's resources, technology level, and economic potential. The committee grew visibly bored. They had seen this countless times. Another young species, another routine approval, another set of minor trade rights granted. Then Elena paused. Before we conclude, I must present one additional document. Earth's government requires that this be submitted to any organization we join. She produced a data crystal and held it up. This is a formal warning that got their attention. The committee members exchanged confused glances. A warning? Asked the Velith chairperson. What manner of warning? A warning about us. Elena said. About humanity. She activated the crystal and new projections filled the air. Images of Earth's history, but not the pleasant images of art and architecture that most species showed. These were different. War, destruction, nuclear explosions, mass grave, soldiers charging across muddy field, cities burning, humans evolved as persistent predators on a high-gravity world with extreme climate variations. Elena explained, her voice steady. We developed violence as a survival strategy before we developed language. Our recorded history spans roughly 6,000 years. In that time we have fought over 15,000 wars. The chamber had gone very quiet. We developed weapons capable of destroying our entire species before we achieved space flight. We came within minutes of using them on multiple occasions. We have committed systematic extermination of our own subspecies and countless other life forms on our planet. Elena let the images continue. Concentration camps, atomic bombs, chemical weapons, the darkest chapters of human history displayed without commentary. We are capable of extreme violence. She continued. We are also capable of extreme compassion, creativity, and cooperation. We have built hospitals and schools. We have created art that moves souls and science that touches the stars. But the capacity for violence is always there beneath the surface. She deactivated the projection. This warning is a formal disclosure. We are not a harmless species. We have chosen peace because we understand the alternative. But that choice requires constant effort, and if we are pushed hard enough, if our people are threatened, if our survival is at stake, the restraint will end. Elena looked directly at each committee member in turn. We submit this warning as a courtesy. We hope it will never be relevant, but honesty requires that you know what humanity is before you decide whether to admit us to your community. Silence held the chamber for a long moment. Then Counselor V3 began to laugh. That it was a deep, rumbling sound that echoed off the curved walls. Other committee members joined in, some with amusement, others with relief at the broken tension. Remarkable, VTHR said, his sharp teeth showing in what might have been a smile. In 300 years on this committee, I have never seen a species try to intimidate their way into membership. It's not intimidation. Elena Clear's throat said calmly, it's disclosure. Of course it is. V3 waved a dismissive hand. Look at you, soft skin, no claws, no natural weapons. Your home world isn't even classified as a deaf world. Your Persistence predators, so are they. Calorie, and they're the most timid. Species in the conquered, other committee. Members nodded in agreement. Your wars are impressive for a primitive species. HFY continued, but you killed each other with simple projectile weapons and chemical explosives. The Torum had unified our world before we developed such crude technology. Real warrior species don't need thousands of years to establish order. The Velith chairperson made a gesture equivalent to a shrug. The warning is noted and will be filed with your application. It's unusual but not prohibited. Do any committee members have concerns about provisional membership? No one spoke. Then provisional membership is granted. The human delegation will receive standard trade rights and observer status. Military consultation access is denied, pending a 20-cycle review period. Welcome to the Galactic Conquered, Elena. Bode again, thank you, honored committee. We hope this is the beginning of a long and peaceful relationship. As she turned to leave, HFY called out, Ambassador, a personal word of advice. Don't try the intimidation approach with actual powerful species. It might give them ideas about testing whether your warnings have substance. Elena paused at the chamber door. She looked back at the Torum counselor with an expression he couldn't quite read. I hope no one ever tests it, she said. Truly I do. Then she was gone. Committee quickly moved on to other business. The human application was filed alongside thousands of others. The warning document attached as a curious footnote. Within days it was forgotten by everyone who had read it. 3 weeks later, a Torum merchant captain named Kathos gathered to other captains for drinks at a station bar. They discussed the new species that had just joined the conquered, soft creatures with rich colonies and minimal defenses, the kind of targets that Torum traders had been exploiting for centuries. The conquered rules protect them. Now one captain pointed out. Krophos dismissed this with a gesture. The rules protect member species from member species, but accidents happen. Pirates exist. Sometimes cargo ships get lost and their goods end up in new hands. What about their military? 300 ships for 12 colonies, spread thin, slow to respond. Krathos pulled up a star chart showing human space. This colony here new. Greenland, agricultural world, small population, far from their core systems. By the time anyone responds to a distress call will be gone, and if they fight. Krophos thought about the human ambassador with her dramatic warnings and her projected images of ancient wars. He thought about her soft skin and average height and complete lack of natural weapons. Then we teach them. New Greenland was a quiet world. Rolling green hills stretched toward distant mountains under a pale blue sky. The colonists had named it well. 200,000 humans lived there, mostly farmers and their families, growing crops that would feed other colonies. It was the kind of place where people knew their neighbors, and children played safely in the streets. Governor Maria Santos stood on her office balcony, watching the sunset paint the hills in shades of orange and gold. She was 60 years old, a former agricultural scientist who had retired to this peaceful colony to escape the stress of Earth politics. She had been governor for 8 years. Nothing exciting ever happened on New Greenland. Her assistant rushed onto the balcony, face pale with fear. Governor, we're receiving a transmission from orbit. 3 ships, they're not ours. 20 Minutes later, Maria stood in the Colonial Communication Center, watching a Torum face fill the main screen. The alien scales were dark gray, and his eyes held the casual cruelty of someone used to getting what he wanted. I am Captain Krathos of the trade vessel Prophet's Edge, the Torum announced. Your colony has been selected for emergency resource redistribution. You will prepare all refined metals, processed food stores, and technical equipment for transfer. Failure to comply will result in enforcement action. Maria's hands were steady, though her heart raced. This is Governor Santos of New Greenland. We are a member colony of the Galactic Concord. Your actions constitute piracy under Concord law. Withdraw immediately. Krathos smiled, showing rows of sharp teeth. The Concord is very far away, Governor, and we have 3 ships with 500 soldiers. You have, according to our scans, a colonial militia of perhaps 200 personnel with light weapons. Do you really want to discuss law? I'm asking you to leave peacefully, and I'm telling you to submit. The Torum captain leaned forward. We've done this many times. Human, young species always resist that. First, then they see our soldiers and their courage melts away. Save your people the pain, give us what we want, and we'll be gone within the day. Maria was quiet for a moment, then she spoke, her voice calm and clear. Captain, I'm going to give you one more chance. Leave now while you still can. Kraft stared at her, then he laughed. A harsh barking sound. You threaten me with what? Farming equipment, with the consequences of your actions. The Torum stopped, laughing. Something in the human's voice bothered him, though he couldn't say what. She wasn't begging, she wasn't even really afraid, despite knowing how outmatched she was. She looked at him the way one might look at someone about to step off a cliff. He dismissed the feeling. Begin landing troops at the main settlement. If they resist, make examples until they stop. The transmission ended. Maria turned to her staff. Every face in the room was watching her. Some were scared, some were angry. None of them suggested surrender. Open the emergency armories, she said. Activate the militia network. And someone get me Colonel Reyes. Colonel Elelena Reyes was 72 years old. She had retired to New Greenland 15 years ago after 40 years in Earth's military. She had served in peacekeeping missions, trained soldiers on 3 colonies, and commanded a destroyer. During the brief border dispute with the Cavalry, her knees ached in cold weather, and she spent most of her days tending a small garden behind her cottage. When the emergency alert reached her, she was already pulling on her old uniform. It still fit situation? She asked as she arrived at the militia headquarters. 3 Torum vessels, 500 soldiers, landing in 30 minutes at the main port. Elena studied the tactical display. The Torum were coming down in a standard pacification formation. They expected resistance to crumble after the first show of force. They expected frightened civilians running for shelter. They had no idea what they were walking into. Alert all militia cells. Elelena ordered. Distribute weapons from the emergency caches. I want every adult who can hold a rifle to have one. Non-combatants evacuate to the mountain shelters through the eastern tunnels. Colonel, we only have 200 trained militia. We can't fight 500 Torum soldiers. Elena smiled grimly. We're not going to fight 500 soldiers. We're going to fight a war. Different thing entirely. The Torum landed their drop ships at the New Greenland spaceport, expecting to find panicking civilians, and perhaps a few foolish guards who would quickly surrender. Instead, they found empty streets in silence. Kravu surveyed the abandoned port from his shuttle. They're hiding. Sweep the buildings round them up. The Torum soldiers moved out in disciplined squads. They were well trained and well equipped, armed with plasma rifles and protected by light armor. They had pacified dozens of colonies across the galaxy. This would be no different. That the first squad entered a warehouse. The explosion killed 6 of them instantly. The survivors stumbled back into the street, confused and bleeding. Before they could regroup, gunfire erupted from 3 different buildings. Humans shot from windows, from rooftops, from drainage tunnels. They used projectile weapons, simple slug throwers that the Torum considered primitive, but primitive or not, the bullets punched through armor at close range. Soldiers fell, returned fire. The squad leader ordered a charge at the nearest building, but when his soldiers burst through the door, they found only empty rooms and open windows. The humans had already moved. This pattern repeated across the colony. The Torum would take a building only to find their enemies gone. They would form up in the streets, only to be hit from unexpected directions. Every block became a death trap. Every corner hid potential attackers. By nightfall, the Torum had taken the spaceport and 3 surrounding blocks. They had lost 40 soldiers. They had captured 0 humans. Krathos raged in his command shuttle. How is this possible? They're farmers. His second officer studied the tactical reports with growing unease. They're not fighting like farmers, Captain. They're using coordinated tactics, ambush, withdrawal, repositioning. Someone is commanding them effectively. Then find whoever is in command and kill them. We're trying, but they're not using standard communication systems. They seem to be using physical messengers, hand signals, prearranged plans. We can't intercept their orders. Krathos slammed his fist against the wall. Send in the second wave. Full assault on the main settlement. Burn it if you have to. The second wave met even fiercer resistance. The humans had used the night to prepare. They had dug trenches in the streets, turned buildings into fortresses, created kill zones with overlapping fields of fire, and they fought with a ferocity that disturbed even veteran Torum warriors. A Torum sergeant reported what he saw to his superiors. They don't retreat when they should. We killed one of them, and his companion picked up his weapon and kept shooting while screaming something in their language. Another one charged our position with an explosive device strapped to his chest. He was smiling. Smiling, yes, as if he was happy to die, as long as he took us with him. By the 3rd day, the Torum had advanced 4 kilometers into the colony. They held the spaceport and a strip of territory leading to the main town. They had lost 160 soldiers, killed nearly twice that many humans, but for every human who fell to more seemed to appear. Farmers who had never held weapons learned to shoot within hours. Teachers organized supply lines. Children carried messages through tunnels too small for Torum soldiers to follow. The entire colony had become an army. On the 4th day, Colonel Reyes led a night raid on the Torum command post. 30 militia members with improvised explosives and captured plasma weapons. They killed the second in command and destroyed half the Torum communication equipment before Disappearing into the darkness, Kravos finally understood that he had made a terrible mistake. These humans were not like other species. They didn't surrender when outmatched. They didn't flee when faced with superior force. They adapted, learned, and kept fighting. With what could only be described as joy, he ordered a full retreat to the spaceport. He would take what he had already captured and leave before things got worse. But things got worse anyway. On the fifth day, ships appeared in orbit, human warships, a response fleet. From the nearest military base, 12 destroyers and a carrier, far more than anyone expected could arrive so quickly. How craft demanded, their nearest base is 3 weeks away. They must have been moving before we even landed. They anticipated our attack. The human fleet didn't waste time with negotiations. They opened fire on the Torum ships. Immediately, the battle lasted for hours. The Torum had larger vessels, but the human ships fought with aggressive, almost reckless tactics. They closed at dangerous ranges. They took hits that should have forced retreats and kept pressing forward. 2 human destroyers were destroyed. All 3 Torum ships were captured or disabled. Kravos surrendered when Marines boarded his vessel. He expected to be killed. Instead, he was restrained and treated with cold professionalism. They clears throat. Humans took him and his surviving soldiers prisoner without torture or abuse. That disturbed him more than anything else would have. Governor Santos addressed the conquered. 2 weeks later, she stood in the same chamber where Ellen Vasquez had submitted humanity's warning, on the same lowered platform designed to make applicants look small. She did not look small. The colony of New Greenland was attacked by Torum vessels operating under the guise of trade. 12 years passed after the New Greenland incident. The galaxy moved on. Trade continued. Alliances shifted. Wars began and ended among distant powers. Humanity remained a minor player in the great game of galactic politics, barely worth noticing, but some had noticed. In hidden meeting chambers throughout conquered space, representatives of 6 powerful species gathered to discuss the human problem. They called themselves the Kree hegemony, a loose alliance, united by shared interests and mutual distrust of anything that might threaten their positions. Their leader was High Arbiter Morinth of the Kree Prime species. He was ancient by any standard. His scaled body supported by mechanical implants that had replaced failing organs over centuries of life, but his mind remained sharp and his vision for galactic order had not changed in 500 years. The humans are becoming troublesome, he said, his voice carried by speakers embedded in his throat. They ignore territorial agreements. They trade with non-conquered species. Worst of all, they protect the weak. Round the table, representatives nodded. The Torum delegate was notably quiet. His species had lost significant respect after the New Greenland disaster. They've taken in refugees from the Pallet Zone. Another representative added, species we specifically marked for gradual absorption. Now those species have human protectors. They're teaching primitive species to resist exploitation, said another. The Venturi Collective has started refusing tribute payments. They cite human support. Morinth listened to the complaints with patience. He had heard them all before. Humanity was disrupting a system that had worked perfectly well for thousands of years. Strong species ruled, weak species served, that was the natural order, and now these newcomers, barely a century into space travel, were upsetting everything. We must act, Morant said. Finally, not through proxies this time. Not through raids that can be blamed on rogue elements. We must act openly with full conquered authority. The chamber fell. Silent, open action against a conquered member was significant. It required votes, justifications, and careful political maneuvering. The humans have violated enough regulations to justify sanctions, Morinth continued. We push for their expulsion from the conquered. Once they're no longer protected by membership, we can deal with them properly. And if they don't accept expulsion peacefully, Morin's mechanical voice carried a hint of amusement, then we have cause for military action. Either way, the human problem ends. The vote took place 3 weeks later in the conquered High Council. The hegemony had done its work well. Representatives who owed favors spoke against humanity. Evidence of regulation violations was presented, most of it technically accurate but stripped of context. The humans had indeed traded with non-conquered species. They had indeed welcomed refugees. They had indeed maintained military forces in zones designated as demilitarized. Ambassador Elelina Vasquez sat in the observer gallery and watched the process. With tired eyes, she had spent months trying to prevent this moment. She had called in every favor, made every argument, appealed to every principle of fairness and justice. It hadn't been enough. The vote stands at 347 in favor of expulsion, 102 against, with 53 abstentions, announced the council. Speaker, humanity is hereby expelled from the galactic conquered, effective immediately. All human vessels and personnel are required to withdraw from disputed territories within 60 standard cycles. Ellen rose and walked to the speaking platform. The chamber quieted. Despite everything, she had earned a certain respect for her persistence. Earth acknowledges this decision, she said. We are disappointed but not surprised. The conquered has made clear that our values are incompatible with membership. She paused, looking around the chamber at the hundreds of representatives watching her. We joined the conquered, hoping to be good neighbors. We respected your laws, participated in your trade systems, and sought peaceful cooperation. When we disagreed with policies, we did so through proper channels. When we protected refugees, we did so because standing aside while innocents suffer is not something humans can do. Her voice remained calm and steady. You have chosen to expel us for acting according to our principles. So be it. We will withdraw from your territories. We will end our trade relationships with conquered members. We will build our own community with species who share our values. Alina reached into her diplomatic pouch and produced a familiar data crystal. Before I leave, I am submitting one final document to this body. It is the same warning we provided when we first applied for membership, the warning you ignored, the warning that many of you still haven't bothered to read. She placed the crystal on the speaking platform. This is the last time we will offer this courtesy, whatever happens next. Remember that we tried to tell you the truth. We told you what we are. We told you what we're capable of. You chose not to listen. She bowed firmly and walked toward the exit. High Arbiter Morin's voice stopped her. Ambassador, you speak as if you expect conflict. The Conquered has no intention of attacking. Humanity, we simply wish you to leave our space. Elena turned back. Her expression was unreadable. I hope that's true. I truly do. She paused. But I've studied history, arbiter hours and yours. When powerful groups expel those they see as threats, they rarely stop at expulsion. She left the chamber without another word. Morinth watched her go with satisfaction. The human was perceptive, he had to admit, but perception wouldn't save her species. The hegemony's fleets were already preparing. Within months, humanity would learn its place in the galactic order. The Kree hegemony's war council met 1 week after the expulsion vote. Military planners presented their assessment of human capabilities based on official reports and intelligence gathering. Total human military vessels, approximately 330, reported Admiral Cathorn, the hegemon's supreme military commander. Fleet disposition is concentrated around their core systems, with minimal patrol presence in outlying colonies. Estimated response time to the border region, 3 weeks minimum. The council reviewed maps, charts, and projections. Everything pointed to an easy victory. Our combined fleet strength is 2,000 vessels, Kev Vorn continued, even accounting for the humans' demonstrated willingness to fight. We outnumber them 6-1. Quick strike at their border colonies will force them to spread thin. We advance on multiple fronts, capture their industrial centers, and negotiate from a position of overwhelming strength. One council member raised a concern. The incident at New Greenland showed that humans fight with unexpected intensity. Should we not prepare for higher resistance than normal? We've accounted for that, Keith Vaughn assured him. New Greenland was a raid by 3 ships against a prepared population. This will be a full military campaign with proper planning and resources. The humans are fierce for their size, but fierceness doesn't win wars. Numbers, logistics, and technology win wars. We have advantages in all 3. Morinth nodded with approval. Begin the campaign. In 30 cycles, we will give the humans time to complete their withdrawal from conquered space. When they refuse to surrender their border colonies, we will have justification for liberation. The council agreed unanimously, but one young intelligence officer remained troubled after the meeting. His name was VTHL, and he was a nephew of Counselor V3. After his uncle's embarrassment following New Greenland, VTHML had made it his personal mission to understand humanity better. He had read their warning document, not just skimmed it, but actually studied it. He had researched their history, their biology, their psychology. He had reviewed every piece of intelligence about human military capabilities, and the numbers didn't make sense. Official reports said 330 military vessels, but shipping records showed far more construction materials flowing to human shipyards than that fleet would require. Human colonies reported minimal military presence, yet their industrial output suggested massive weapons production. VTHML took his concerns to Admiral Cathorn's staff. He was politely dismissed. The intelligence was clear. He was told the humans had a small fleet, suitable for their small territory. Any discrepancies were accounting errors or civilian construction mislabeled. He tried again, presenting detailed analysis of human military history. He showed how humans had fought wars lasting decades, how their casualties in Single conflicts exceeded the entire population of some conquered species. How? They had developed weapons capable of destroying all life on their home world before they even left its surface. Ancient history, one officer told him. Primitive species fight among themselves. Before achieving unity, the humans have been peaceful since they reached space. Their violent past is behind them, but what if it's not behind them? VTH Mall. Pressed, what if they've simply chosen not to show what they can do? The officer laughed. You think they're hiding a secret fleet where we've surveyed their entire territory? We know what they have. VTHMA left the meeting. Frustrated, he knew he was right, but he couldn't prove it. The hegemony's leadership had already decided that humans were weak. No amount of evidence would change minds that were already made up. He sent a private message to his uncle. Something is wrong with our intelligence. The hegemony's invasion began exactly as planned. 2,000 warships crossed into human space on a dozen different fronts. They expected scattered resistance, quick victories, and conquered colonies within weeks. The first sign that something was wrong came within hours. Admiral Kethorn commanded the main assault fleet from his flagship, the Dominance Eternal. His force of 800 vessels targeted the human industrial hub of New Pittsburgh, a heavily developed world that produced a significant portion of humanity's publicly known fleet. Approaching the target system, his navigation officer reported no defensive response detected. The humans must be concentrating their forces elsewhere. Keith Vaughn nodded with satisfaction. This was going exactly as predicted. Take the industrial centers first, their production capability, then mop up the scattered colonies at leisure. The fleet emerged from faster than light travel at the edge of the New Pittsburgh system. Sensors immediately began reporting contacts. Admiral, we're detecting multiple vessels in defensive positions. How many? The officer scales went paleo. 412 combat vessels, sir. And they're moving to intercept. Kev Vorn stared at the display in disbelief. The humans were supposed to have 330 ships total. This single system had more defenders than their entire fleet should possess. Before he could react, the human ships attacked. They came in fast, much faster than hegemony vessels could match. Their weapons fire was devastating, cutting through shields with efficiency that shocked hegemony gunners, and they showed no fear, no hesitation. Ships dove into close range, where casualties would be maximum on both sides. The first hour of battle cost Kethorn 60 vessels. Human losses were perhaps 20, and more human ships kept arriving, emerging from concealed positions throughout the system. Where are they coming from? Keith Vaughn demanded. We surveyed the system. We knew exactly what defenses they had. His intelligence officer could only shake his head. They must have hidden reserves, deep space facilities we never detected, sir. We're facing a prepared defense. This isn't a surprise attack on an undefended colony. They were waiting for us. Kev Vaughn ordered a tactical withdrawal. His fleet regrouped at the system's edge while he called for reports from other invasion fronts. The news was uniformly bad. Every front had met unexpected resistance. The northern assault found 300 human ships where 50 should have been. The southern fleet ran into a minefield so dense that they lost 100 vessels before even engaging the enemy. The Eastern Strike Force encountered weapons they had never seen before, energy beams that cut through armor like paper. Total confirmed human. Vessels engaged across all fronts, his operations officer reported grimly. Approximately 2,000, and that appears to be only a portion of their fleet. We're detecting more ships massing in their core systems, 2,000 ships more than their entire invasion force, and apparently that was just what the humans had chosen to show them. How is this possible? Kev Vaughn whispered. 80 years of space travel, a fraction of our industrial capacity. How did they build this fleet without us knowing? No one had an answer. High Arbiter Morinth received the battle reports in his command center on Kree Prime. The screens around him showed disaster after disaster, fleets retreating, ships destroyed, invasion plans collapsing. They deceived us, he said slowly. From the very beginning, their small fleet was always a lie. His advisors scrambled to explain. Theories flew about hidden shipyards, secret alliances, unknown benefactors who had provided technology and resources. None of the theories quite fit the evidence. The truth was simpler and more disturbing. Humanity had built this fleet themselves. They had simply chosen not to tell anyone about it. Commit the reserve forces. Morinth ordered all 1,000 vessels. We still have numerical advantage if we concentrate our strength. Arbiter, our losses already exceed 600 ships. If we commit the reserves and fail, we cannot fail. The alternative is unacceptable. Morinth's mechanical voice hardened. The reserves target their home world directly. If we threaten Earth itself, they will be forced to negotiate. The reserve fleet launched within days. 1,000 fresh warships, the finest the hegemony could field. They pushed deep into human space, bypassing contested systems, racing toward Earth. They never reached it. The human response fleet intercepted them in open space, far from any planet or station. 1,500 human vessels, including classes that hegemony intelligence had never catalogued. Carriers launching fighters in swarms. Battleships with weapons that defied known physics, and everywhere that same aggressive, almost eager approach to combat. Admiral Chen commanded the human fleet personally from the bridge of the carrier Unity. He watched the hegemony fleet approach with something like sadness in his eyes. They still don't understand, he said to his executive officer. They think this is about numbers, about technology. They don't understand what they're really fighting. What are we really fighting for, sir? Everything we tried to leave behind. Chen straightened in his command chair. All weapons free, all ships advance. Show them what humanity can do. The battle lasted 18 hours. When it ended, the hegemony reserve fleet had been effectively destroyed. 700 ships captured or crippled, 300 destroyed outright. Human losses were 112 vessels. Among the captured ships was a small courier vessel carrying classified hegemony documents. The documents revealed the full scope of Morinth's plans, not just conquest but systematic exploitation. Human colonies would be stripped of resources. Human populations would be dispersed to serve as labor on hegemony worlds. Human culture, history, and identity would be erased over generations. Admiral Chen read the documents and felt something cold settle in his chest. He had spent his career believing that war should be limited, that enemies could be defeated without being destroyed, that there was always room for mercy. He looked at the plans for the systematic destruction of his species and found that mercy was suddenly much harder to feel. The counteroffensive began 3 months into the war. Human fleets pushed into hegemony territory on 5 fronts. They didn't just win battles, they won them decisively with casualty ratios that made military analysts sweep. The hegemony's allies began to reconsider their commitments. One by one, member species of the alliance withdrew their forces. They had joined the hegemony, expecting easy victories and shared spoils. Instead, they were facing extermination. Morinth watched his alliance crumble with bitter acceptance. He had underestimated the humans. Everyone had underestimated the humans. They had looked at the soft skin, the average size, the relatively primitive home world, and seen weakness. They had been fools. Human soldiers fought with a persistence that bordered on madness. They didn't stop when wounded. They improvised weapons from anything available. They formed bonds with their squadmates so strong that they would die rather than abandon each other, and they kept coming, no matter how many fell. More replaced them. Human colonies that should have surrendered after losing battles instead organized guerrilla resistance. Human civilians volunteered for military service in numbers that strained logistic systems. The entire species had mobilized for war, but what disturbed Morinth most was what they humans didn't do. They didn't use their most terrible weapons, intelligence. Reports described human weapons capable of destroying entire worlds, biological agents that could eliminate populations, chemical weapons that caused suffering. Beyond imagination, the humans had developed these things centuries ago. Long before they reached space, they weren't using them. The war continued with conventional weapons, kinetic projectiles, energy beams, nuclear warheads used only against military targets. The humans fought with devastating effectiveness, but also with restraint. Morin finally understood. The warning document that Earth had submitted wasn't just about what humans were capable of doing, it was about what they were choosing not to do. Every battle, every victory, every captured system was the humans holding back in. Still, they were winning. 6 months into the war, a hegemony delegation requested negotiations. Admiral Chen met them aboard a neutral station, accompanied by Ambassador Vasquez in a security detail of human marines. The lead negotiator was VTHMO, the young intelligence officer who had tried to warn his superiors. He looked exhausted and terrified, but he met the humans' eyes with something like respect. "I advised against this war," he said quietly. No one listened. "Now perhaps you will listen to me." Al Vasquez studied him for a moment. "You read our warning document?" "Actually read it, yes. I was one of the few." "Then you know what we're capable of." "I know what your history shows. I know that you develop weapons to destroy yourselves before you learn to leave your planet. I know that your species has fought wars that killed more beings than the total population of the Kree species." VTHML paused. "And I know that despite all of that, you're not using your worst weapons against us." Admiral Chen spoke. "We're hoping we won't have to. Why, you could end this war tomorrow. You have planet killers. We've confirmed their existence. One strike against Kree Prime would collapse the hegemony completely." "Yes," Chen agreed, "it would." Then why don't you use them? There was silence in the room. Humans exchanged glances. Finally, Vasquez spoke, because we know near. After the war ended, Station Paramount hosted the largest diplomatic gathering in galactic history. Representatives from over 500 species filled the assembly chambers, carters, and observation decks. The old Concord still existed, but it was a shadow of its former self. The hegemony's collapse had shattered the power structures that had dominated for millennia. Now, everyone waited to see what would rise. In their place, Ambassador Elena Vasquez stood before the assembled species. She was older now, her hair fully gray, but her eyes held the same calm strength they always had. Beside her stood representatives from dozens of species who had allied with humanity during the war, refugees who had found shelter in human space, small powers who had been exploited under the old order, former hegemony members who had broken ranks when they saw which way the war was heading. They called themselves the Terran Compact. Thank you for gathering here today, Elena began. 1 year ago, we were at war. The galaxy expected humanity to emerge as conquerors, to claim the hegemony's territory and establish a new empire built on the same foundations as the old one: power through force, order through fear. She paused, looking around the vast chamber. That is not what we did, and that is not what we intend to do. Murmurs rippled through the assembly. Many species had come expecting demands, ultimatums, or at least a display of military might. Instead, they found a single human woman, speaking in calm, measured tones. Humanity is a young species by your standards, 80 years among the stars, 6,000 years of recorded history. In that time we have done terrible things. We have also done wonderful things. We have learned slowly and painfully that lasting peace cannot be built on fear alone, that true strength includes the strength to show mercy, that the measure of a civilization is not how it treats the powerful, but how it treats the weak. She activated a display that showed the familiar warning document that humanity had submitted so many times before. When we first applied for Concord membership, we submitted this warning. It describes what humanity is capable of, our capacity for violence, our history of war, the weapons we developed to kill each other before we ever left our home world. The chamber was completely silent. Every word of that warning was true. You have seen the proof. Our fleets crushed the hegemony's invasion. Our soldiers fought with a ferocity that shocked even veteran warriors. Our weapons could have destroyed worlds, and everyone now knows it. She deactivated the display, but that warning was only half the story. The other half, the half we hoped you would understand without being told, is that humanity chooses not to use its full capabilities. Every day, every hour, we choose restraint, we choose peace, we choose to be better than our darkest impulses. Elena stepped forward closer to the assembly. The hegemony saw our restraint as weakness. They thought our warnings were bluffs. They learned otherwise, but here is the lesson that many of you may still be missing. Our restraint is not weakness. It is our greatest strength. It is what separates civilization from savagery. She gestured to the representatives standing behind her. The Terran Compact is not a new empire. It is a partnership, a community of species who have agreed to cooperate to protect each other, to build something better than what came before. membership is open to any species that agrees to our founding principles. A holographic display appeared showing a simple document. First, no member shall attack another member. Disputes will be resolved through negotiation and arbitration. Second, no member shall exploit or enslave populations of any species. Third, all members shall contribute to collective defense against external threats. Fourth, all members shall provide sanctuary to refugees fleeing persecution. Fifth, all members shall deal honestly with each other and with non-members. Elelina lethe. Principles hang in the air. These are not complicated rules, they are basic decency. They are what humanity tried to bring to the conquered, and what they conquered rejected. Now we offer them to anyone willing to accept them. She turned to face the section where the remaining conquered powers sat, the Velith, the Morin, and among them, diminished but still present, the Torum. We know that some of you fear humanity. You have reason too. We know that some of you resent our rise. You have reason for that too. We do not ask you to forget the past or pretend that the war never happened. Her voice softens slightly. We only ask you to consider what kind of galaxy you want to live in. One where the strong prey on the weak forever, or one where strength is used to protect rather than exploit. Counselor Vithrai stood slowly. The chamber watched as the Torium, who had once mocked humanity's warning, made his way to the speaking platform. He looked old now, worn down by years of political battles and personal disgrace. May I speak? He asked. Alina nodded and stepped aside. Vithrai faced the assembly. Many of you know me. I was on the committee that admitted humanity to the conquered. I laughed at their warning. I called them soft and harmless. I mocked their ambassador. He paused, gathering himself. I was a fool. The admission hung in the air. Two did not admit mistakes. Their culture valued strength and pride above almost everything else. For Vithray to say these words publicly was remarkable. They humans tried to tell us the truth about themselves. We didn't listen because the truth didn't match what we expected. We saw small bodies and lack of natural weapons and assumed we knew everything we needed to know. He turned to face Elena. We were wrong about what humanity is, but I think we were also wrong about what strength is. I watched the war. I saw humanity win battle after battle, and then I saw them offer mercy to enemies who deserved none. His voice grew stronger. That is not weakness. That is a kind of strength my people have never understood. The strength to have power and choose not to use it. The strength to defeat enemies and then help them rebuild. Vithrai bowed his head, gesture of respect that Talam rarely offered to anyone. The Torum Dominion will join the Terran Compact, not because we fear humanity, though perhaps we should, but because we have seen a better way and we wish to learn it. He returned to his seat. After a moment of shocked silence, other representatives began to stand. The Velith, several species from the former hegemony, small powers who had been waiting to see which way the wind would blow. One by one, they announced their intention to join. The old conquered didn't dissolve that day, but everyone could see that its time was ending. Something new was being born. Elena watched the declarations with quiet satisfaction. She had worked toward this moment for years. She had submitted that warning document over and over, hoping someone would finally understand what it meant. Now they understood. After the assembly Concluded, Alina found a quiet observation deck overlooking the stars. She was tired in a way that went beyond physical exhaustion. A lifetime of work was finally showing results, but she couldn't quite let herself celebrate. HFY found her there, the young Cree officer who had tried to warn his superiors, who had led the peace negotiations, and who now served as the hegemony's representative to the new order. Ambassador, he said, I have a question, if you'll permit it. Alina nodded. Your warning document, it described humanity's capacity for terrible violence, but it didn't mention your capacity for mercy, for restraint, for choosing peace. Why not? Alina considered the question for a long moment. Because we weren't sure, she said finally. The violence is certain. It's built into our history, our biology, our psychology. We know we can destroy. We've proven it many times over. She turned to look at VTHL. Mercy, the restraint, the choice to be better, that's never guaranteed. Every generation has to make that choice. Fresh, every person has to decide again and again not to give in to the worst parts of themselves. We couldn't promise you that we would always choose wisely, because we don't know for certain ourselves, but you did choose wisely. In the war, after the war, you showed mercy when revenge would have been justified. Alina smiled sadly. This time, yes, but there's no guarantee about next time or the time after that. That's why the warning only promises violence. The mercy has to be earned again and again. Forever. VTHMO was quiet for a while, processing this. That seems exhausting, he said at last. It is, Alina agreed, but it's also what makes us human, not the capacity for destruction. And he cleared his throat. Species can destroy. What makes us human is the constant struggle to be better than our instincts, to look at what we could do and choose to do something else instead. She turned back to the stars. The galaxy has seen what we can do when we stop holding back. Now they need to see what we can do when we work together instead. That's the real test, not winning wars, but building peace. VTHML nodded slowly. I hope you succeed. So do we, more than you can possibly know. She smiled at him, genuine warmth breaking through the exhaustion. Now go back to your people and tell them what you've learned. Tell them that humans are dangerous, yes, but also tell them that we're trying every day. We're trying to be worthy of the power we hold. She paused. And tell them that the warning still stands. It always will. Not as a threat, but as a reminder. We know what we are. We choose what we become. And as long as we keep making that choice, maybe the galaxy has a chance at something better.